Tigers are the biggest of the cat family, attacking and killing prey with ease. Even though their numbers have dwindled in the past few centuries due to illegal hunting, tiger attacks are still pretty common in the regions where they are found. Today, we're about to show you some of the rare video footage of these big cats attacking and killing their prey. Be advised that the following video is graphic in nature. Now, let's get down to it. Tiger versus cat. Tigers are lone hunters who are always on the lookout for weak prey that can't put up too much of a fight. An unaware cow is just such an animal, which has almost no protection against the tiger's agility and raw strength. In this clip, the cow is walking around in its own thoughts, without even realizing that a tiger is right behind it. By the time it does notice the tiger approaching, it is already too late. It's almost too easy a catch for this big cat. Within minutes, it kills the bovine and drags its carcass out of the camera's view to eat in peace. Well, it has earned it. Not all tigers are that lucky though. Some really have to work for their food. In this clipping, a clearly overweight tiger wants to catch the cow. However, due to the added pounds, the tiger is having a tough time pursuing its prey. In this particular case, the cow has an upper hand when it comes to speed, but speed alone won't save its life. The tiger suddenly releases an unexpected burst of speed, catching the cow by surprise. After that, the poor animal hardly gets any time to recover. Even with all that added weight, this tiger proved that he still didn't lose his abilities to hunt. While the previous tiger was bred in captivity and grew too fat, the tigers in the wild are almost always fitter. They are also faster on their feet. In this video, the tiger comes out of nowhere and gives chase to a family of cows. While fleeing, one cow takes a nasty tumble, giving the hunter the perfect opportunity to launch the death strike. That unfortunate fall cost this cow its life, while for the tiger, it was a blessing in disguise. Tiger versus deer. Since tigers are lone hunters, they can't rely on numbers when hunting. Instead, their best weapon is the element of surprise. Sneaking into an attack has the best chances of bringing down the prey. In this video, a tiger spots a group of deer drinking water from a nearby water body. This tiger knows that it will get only one opportunity to grab one of the unsuspecting animals. If it fails, they will vanish inside the dense jungle in a matter of seconds. Watch how he moves silently, placing each foot with the utmost care so that the deer aren't alerted to his presence. Then, when he is absolutely close by, the tiger rushes in and is able to grab a deer calf. The expert hunting technique on display is truly spectacular. In some cases, stalking a deer can take hours, and tigers have to be extremely patient. This sandbar deer notices the hunter on the prowl and uses a water body to make its escape. However, what it doesn't know is that the tiger never took its eyes off. Even hours after the escape, the tiger slowly creeps in. By this time, the sandbar deer is already off guard. It must have been busy celebrating its victory over the tiger too soon to notice the ferocious predator lurking nearby. A sudden attack takes the deer off guard, and the tiger is able to grab its hind leg. The deer looks for any opening to escape, but this big cat is too agile to let such a thing happen. When it finally lets go of the leg, it jumps on top of the deer in the flash of an eye, long before the prey has a chance to run. Then, the tiger sinks its teeth into the throat of the animal and executes it in classic fashion. Tiger versus antelope. Antelopes aren't completely defenseless creatures, with two sharp horns on their heads. On a good day, they can injure predators with their horns and save their hides. However, when a determined tiger is after you, just your horns wouldn't be enough to protect your life. In this video, a tiger smells that a herd of antelopes have been released nearby. Rather than chasing towards them, the tiger lies in wait to seize the perfect opportunity. This opportunity arrives when one of the antelopes is separated from its herd. Now's the perfect chance, and the waiting tiger doesn't waste any time. Before the animal can even realize what is actually happening, the tiger is already there. For a second, the deer tries to hit the big cat with its horns, but the sharp teeth of the tiger latches onto its throat before that. The bite is so powerful that it paralyzes the antelope completely and leaves it unable to resist. Now that's what you call a deadly hunter. It isn't always this easy though. In our next clip, the antelope is ready to face the tiger. It raises the horns in the air and challenges the predator to attack. While these horns wouldn't necessarily kill a tiger, that can still lead to painful wounds. The wildcat is too smart to risk such an injury by going in for a blind attack. For a while, the animal assesses the situation and circles around the antelope. At one point, it seems as if the tiger is about to give up on the hunt. Perhaps this was done to lure the antelope into a false sense of security. Eventually, when the big cat does pounce, the antelope isn't able to do any damage, and just like that, the battle is over. Not only is a tiger fast and strong, it also has a strategic mind that can outsmart its prey at every turn. Tiger versus boar. Tigers like the taste of pork too, and they can't just visit a posh restaurant to get a taste of the finest pork ribs. Tigers have to rely on their hunting prowess for such things. In this video, a tiger has its eyes set on a juicy-looking wild boar, but hunting it would require immense stealth and planning. Watch how the big cat slowly navigates through the tall grass, keeping in mind not to disturb the grass blades and make noise. It twists its tail around the grass to avoid breaking cover. It then waits for the perfect opportunity just outside the boar's sight. When the opening arrives, the large cat pounces, and in a matter of seconds, the boar's throat is in its mouth. With precision and power, the tiger crushes the prey's windpipe and kills it. Then, the tiger pulls off one of the most savage moves. It leaves the hunt out in the open and lies down for a nap. It knows that no other animal in the jungle will dare steal its food. Now that's what you would expect from a strong tiger. Some wild boars put up a much stronger fight when cornered by a tiger though. For instance, look at this clip and see how the boar screams when its attacker bites down on its throat. It thrashes around for a significant time, refusing to go down. But with each passing minute, the boar's chances of survival grow dim as the tiger's teeth sink deeper and deeper into its flesh. Just when you think all hope is lost, the boar gives a last-ditch effort and manages to get back up on its feet. An impressive achievement for sure given the circumstances. But escaping a tiger isn't that simple. The predator doesn't let up on the attack for even a second. With two paws gripping onto its flesh, the tiger uses raw strength to pull its prey inside the trees and disappear. We're pretty sure the poor boar didn't make it, but instead served as lunch for the wild cat. Tiger versus gaur. Gaurs are native to Southeast and South Asia and are often referred to as the largest members in the bovine family. They look muscular, and their horns look like they could do serious damage in a fight. But is that enough to scare away a tiger? Not by a long shot. Watch this clip, where a tiger spots something in the shrubs. While the camera doesn't pick up what it is, the tiger's senses are keener. It inches closer with each step and finally attacks a full-grown gaur. The Indian bison is completely perplexed by this attack and doesn't really know how to defend itself. We wouldn't blame it though, since the tiger jumping at you has got to be the most intimidating sight in the world. As always, the predator goes for the throat. What's amazing is just how long the bison keeps standing, even when it's literally suffocating. The gaur is by no means a weak animal, and this tiger does a wonderful job in taking it down. By the end of the video, you can see the bison go down and its eyes turn glassy. This tiger has just bagged itself a huge meal. Tiger versus leopard. Big cats of different species don't usually cross paths with each other. You'll hardly ever see a face-off between lions and tigers. But what about a fight between tigers and a leopard? Well, that certainly happened. This video shows two tigers cornering a leopard. Is this a feud over territory, or are the tigers simply craving some leopard meat? Whatever be the reason, the tigers in this clip approach from different sides to prevent the other wild cat from escaping. While leopards are strong animals in their own right, a straight-up fight with two strong tigers is sure to end badly for it. As the two attackers close and leap towards the leopard, it does what it does best. The leopard flees, avoiding the first tiger and crashing headfirst into the second one. But somehow, it manages to get past both unharmed. This has to be one of the rarest attacks you will ever see. Tiger versus crocodile. Tigers and crocodiles usually stay away from each other, but when the two face off, the results can be surprising and unpredictable. This is a rare footage of a tigress attacking a crocodile on land. You'd think that the crocodile would be able to hold its own in such a tussle, but the footage proves otherwise. The aggressive tiger doesn't give any opportunity to the water predator to come after it. Instead, the tigress jumps on top of the animal and bites down hard on its neck region. We wonder what this crocodile did to anger the big cat so much. Perhaps it stole the tigress's food, or maybe it just tried to bully her. Regardless of the reasons, for the vicious attack, the crocodile pays dearly for messing with the tigress. After a bit of struggle, the sharp teeth of the wild cat are just too big and strong for the croc to endure. It breathed its last. This just goes to show the pure strength and capabilities of tigers in general. Tiger versus lion. If you are anything like us, you must have wondered how a fight between a tiger and a lion would go. Well, look for yourself. The adult tiger and a male lion seem to be exchanging blows in this video. When you both have such strong teeth and bite, it's better to go at it using different tools. Here, the tiger and lion slap each other with their massive paws. Each of these whacks have so much strength and power that one hit can easily kill a grown human being. We don't know what the argument was about, but this face-off sure seems scary, like two behemoths going up against one another. That was all for today. Tell us how the video changed your perception of tiger attacks in the comments section. Also, don't forget to like the video and share with family and friends. Subscribe to our channel if you are interested in similar videos. Make sure to click on the bell icon and turn on all notifications. Have a wonderful day ahead, and we'll see you.
This is the terrifying true story of Russian poacher Vladimir Markov, who in 1997 found out firsthand the consequences of picking a fight with the largest and most formidable big cat of the frozen taiga forests, the Siberian tiger. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is one of the most gruesome tiger attacks of all time. Welcome to Final Affliction. The tiger weighs over 500 pounds and can grow to be 3 meters or 10 feet long from nose to tail. With sharp canine teeth over 3 inches long, it can tear apart entire limbs in a single bite. The Siberian tiger is known to possess a particularly vengeful and begrudging attitude towards anyone that dares cross its path, man or beast. With a cunning mind to match, it can remember encounters for weeks and plan elaborate plots to follow and hunt its prey. Once a near-extinct species, the predator also known as the Amur tiger had come back to life through conservation efforts and repopulated the province of Primoria near the world's largest undammed river, the Amur River. For decades, the tiger sat comfortably at the top of the food chain, feeding on moose, elk, and wild boar. That was until humans started populating the region, trying to scrape out a living in the dense taiga forests after the fall of the Soviet Union. Poachers realized the potential of this area, despite the fact that they had to settle among some of the most dangerous predators in the world. The meat of the Siberian tiger and the wild boar fetched good money in the black markets near the Chinese border, and for many like Markov, this was their only sustenance in the broken post-Soviet economy. On a cold winter morning in 1997, Markov loaded his supplies, kissed his wife goodbye, and set out with his friend on a 50-mile drive deep in the heart of the frozen taiga forest. The plan was to spend the night in a remote cabin and leave to hunt in the morning. As the sun dawned, he set out on foot accompanied by his attack dogs, who could also be used to sniff out the scent of the Siberian tigers from their footprints. In below freezing temperatures, the snow covered the solid ground by at least 10 inches as Markov limped his way through the layers of snow among the forest trees and thick brush. Markov spotted a trail of footprints that were even bigger than his hand. Prints as large as this could only belong to the great Siberian tiger. He followed the tracks for miles, hoping they would lead him to the animal they belonged to. Armed with a shotgun, Markov was confident that he was one clear shot away from a kill that could make him good money in this failing economy. Then as he peered over one of the trees, he saw the enormous Siberian tiger feeding on a wild boar. It looked over at the man, locking eyes for a few seconds before going back to eating, refusing to let go of its kill. The fierce animal looked unfazed as its muscles rippled with every bite of flesh it pulled from the dead boar. Markov realized he was close enough to get the clear shot he needed. He raised his shotgun and fired a bullet straight into its torso. It was a sure hit, he thought. It was only a matter of time that the tiger would succumb to the fatal injury. He walked ahead, salvaged whatever meat he could from the carcass of the dead wild boar, and followed the tiger a few more miles as it limped away injured in the deep snow. The white snow made it easy to follow the blood trail, but he noticed it decreasing the farther he went along in its pursuit. It wasn't long afterwards that the trail stopped, and Markov was left standing alone in the snow with no idea of where the tiger was, dead or alive. He quickly realized that the tiger must not have been fatally wounded and decided to head back to his camp to return the next day. He stored one piece of the boar meat just outside of his camp and left for town to see what he could trade for the other one. But while Markov was away, the wounded tiger had followed the scent of the man to the cabin and smelled its boar hunt stored outside in the wellhead. In frustration, the tiger reclaimed his kill and destroyed the wellhead in the process. It then camped outside near the cabin, awaiting the man's return. When Markov got back to the cabin, he noticed his dogs barking loudly and incessantly, trying to signal to him that something wasn't right. He peered through the window and saw the tiger at a distance. He called his dogs back into the cabin. If the injured tiger had still not left after reclaiming its boar meat, he was after more than just the boar meat. Markov realized that the animal had come for vengeance, and he could not afford to let it live once it had smelled his scent. He set up his gun through a shooting port in the wall and opened fire, wounding the tiger twice now from the same gun. It disappeared into the forest, still able to carry itself despite being shot several times. Markov decided to go to his friend Duncha's cabin not far away and drive away to safety with him in his car. His friend urged him to stay the night at his place because the car's radiator fluid had to be drained every night to keep it running, and they couldn't leave right away. Markov was now visibly frustrated and decided to make his way back to his cabin and deal with the problem the only way a poacher knows, by shooting the tiger until it's dead. Little did he know, in his absence, the tiger had torn down his cabin's front door and had made its way inside, chewing and clawing at anything that had Markov's scent on it. It shred to pieces clothing, mattresses, and tools that he had used, and then found a well-hidden spot outside the trail to lie in wait for Markov's return. It was dark, and Markov was just making his way to the entrance of the cabin when he was ambushed by the tiger. Caught unarmed, he soon found himself at the mercy of the vengeful Siberian tiger, and after their last two encounters, there wasn't much mercy left. Several hours later, investigators discovered a chilling scene outside of the camp, one that captured the grueling nature of the attack and the terrified helplessness of Markov in his final moments before being devoured. The snow around the scene had melted and flattened from the wrestling and wriggling that Markov must have tried while being eaten alive. There wasn't much to call Markov's body anyway. A few bones here, a pool of blood, red snow there. Some of his clothes were found several feet away. His shoes still carried his severed feet. His sleeves still held his detached arms. The tiger was momentarily pacified after tearing apart its hunter and headed downstream. Word had now gotten out of the man-eating Siberian tiger, and terrified poachers and settlers evacuated the taiga forest to escape the same fate as Markov. The only one still in the area was 25-year-old Andrei Pachutnya. He was a trapper who had set up traps in the forest to catch animals for their fur. Andrei's parents urged him not to leave the house to check his traps until the tiger had been found, but he did not heed any advice to stay inside and set out in the forest. In Andrei's absence, the tiger had found his cabin and thrashed it just like it did to Markov's cabin. The Siberian tiger seemed to want to follow and tear to pieces anything that smelled remotely human. Upon his return, he was ambushed by the tiger near a neighbor's cabin, nestled behind a mattress as if it had been lying in wait for him all along. There was not much fight or resistance. Andrei attempted to pull his shotgun from his shoulder and take aim, but the bullet refused to fire. In the harsh Russian winters, older guns were known to have ammunition failures from a frozen cartridge. His shotgun failed at the last moment he would have wanted it to. Andrei was now easy pickings for the Siberian tiger, as it jumped on top of him, leaving him little chance for a fight. Young Andrei's father called for a search and rescue mission to find his son, and they did. But all that was now left of Andrei was a few bloodied clothes and a chard of the cross. The tiger had been feeding on him for over 3 days when the search team discovered him, and there was little of Andrew they could salvage from the site to return to his father. At the time, Project Tiger was a Western-funded animal conservation group operating in the taiga forest, trying to stop illegal hunters and poachers from driving the Siberian tiger to the brink of extinction. The head tracker for the mission, Yuri Trush, found himself in an ironic predicament. As a tiger conservationist and a researcher himself, he was tasked by the authorities to find the injured tiger and kill it on the spot. He was accompanied by officers Shibnev and Pionka, and the trio soon discovered the tracks of a limping tiger. It had been walking on 3 legs, carrying one in the air, likely wounded. The tracks led them to a remote area near the cabin of a man named Shlemenko. The party now knew the tiger was nearby. They listened closely to every ruffle in the trees and then saw the slightest movement in their field of vision. As they went close to the cabin entrance, the giant Siberian tiger leapt at Officer Trush from behind with a deafening, loud roar. All 3 men frantically tried to aim their guns at the tiger, but it was too late for the head tracker, as he quickly found himself beneath the angry behemoth tiger, clawing and gnawing at his vulnerable body. In the heat of the moment, the trio had fired dozens of bullets, and 11 of those hit the tiger, which after a few seconds finally collapsed and died. Gathering his senses, Officer Trush tried to figure out where his rifle had gone, only to later realize it had partially gone down the tiger's throat as it jumped at him. The Siberian tiger was loaded onto a truck and taken to the village to confirm that it was indeed the correct tiger. The tiger, after killing, maiming, and terrorizing settlers for far too long, had now finally been killed. The animal was later skinned and put up for display in the region's administrative headquarters as a stark reminder of the horror brought by the man-eating tiger, and a lesson for what happens when man and beast cross each other's paths, and in this situation, leading to 2 people's terrifying final affliction.
6 chilling tiger encounters are sure to make you want to stay as far away from safaris as possible. Number 6. In Jim Corbett National Park, a few tourists witnessed a tiger come face to face with an elephant, and the outcome is horrifying. The video initially starts off with a view of both the elephant riders and the tiger intensely staring each other down. Meanwhile, the tourists continue to photograph the event as things seem rather calm at first. After a few minutes, though, things take a shocking turn. With the huge elephant bravely holding its ground, the predator luckily decides to give up and head back into the bushes. Number 5. Shot at Jim Corbett National Park, this video captures a violent tiger chasing and trying to attack an innocent group of tourists. In the beginning, the wild animal is seen calmly walking towards the tourists, who grab this opportunity to take multiple photographs, making their presence known. The predator is then observed trying to walk away, but the bystanders in the jeep continue to instigate it. What happens next is truly terrifying. Luckily, the tourists were quick to drive away and give the animal the space it wanted, allowing it to finally walk back into the jungle completely. Number 4. In the vast forests of Nepal, a man was trotting his path on an elephant when a wild beast surprised him from out of nowhere. For a couple of minutes, the jungle appears empty, with no sign of danger. However, 2 minutes into this video, a tiger can be seen suddenly appearing in the distance, which the man bravely decides to start following around. After chasing the animal for a few minutes, the videographer spots it amidst the jungle yet again. This time, though, it clearly acknowledges his presence as it can be seen staring him down. A few moments later, the beast decides that enough is enough and immediately asserts its dominance by growling and charging towards the cameraman. By the end, the man thankfully decides to leave the territorial predator alone and go on with his expedition somewhere else. Number 3. A tourist exploring the Mutanga forest in Kerala encounters the surprise of his life when a wild tiger crosses his path. The video starts off with a bright flashlight shining right into the dark woods, where a lone tiger is seen casually wandering around. Shocked by what he is seeing, the cameraman then proceeds to follow the tiger around with the vehicle, seemingly not worrying about the potential dangers of doing so. Despite the humans making their presence known, the beast miraculously doesn't appear to care much and just continues walking like normal. After a few minutes, though, the tourists eventually lose sight of the animal as it disappears through some thick bushes. Number 2. A few people encountered a furious tiger in Jim Corbett Park, and what happened next is absolutely wild. The video begins with the videographer capturing a zoomed-in shot of a tiger that can be seen sitting behind some trees. Moments go by as the men continue to bravely observe the predator from up close. Unfortunately, things don't remain so peaceful for much longer. The furious tiger charged toward the jeep and came a little too close for comfort. However, by the end, the beast can be seen walking away towards the woods. Number 1. In Bandipur National Park, a few tourists on a safari tour were left stunned when they came way too close to a fearless male tiger. Initially, things pick up right as the tour guides notice the animal up ahead and immediately drive towards it to allow the visitors to see it from closer. Surprisingly, everyone is left shook as the lethal predator is seen carelessly beginning to walk right past their cars.
Please silence.
In the end, the unbothered tiger crosses the road completely and goes on minding its own business towards the other side of the park.
Welcome back to Scary Animal Attacks. Today's episode takes us to the border between Nepal and northwestern India. On the eastern edge of the Indian province of Uttarakhand, the Himalayas lay out the northern border and provide the slope that jungle and fields cling to. The name of this province means the land of the gods and fits the topic of this episode. This province showcases over 34,000 square kilometers of forested land. The plant life in this area is very diverse, as there are 520 species of plants and 498 of them are flowering plants. Areas range from alpine and temperate rainforests featuring pines and hardwoods to lower areas featuring more tropical plants. The animal life here is as diverse as any on the planet, with smaller felines like the jungle cat, fishing cat, and leopard cat prowling the ground, and larger cats like leopard and tiger pursuing larger prey animals. Sloth, brown, and Asiatic black bear can be found here as well, creating a very broad spectrum of animals. The smaller animals are so abundant that we are not even going to list them here for the sake of time. Our story really begins just across the border in Nepal. In the western province of Sudur Pashchim, the Nepalese army gathered to confront a tiger that was terrorizing local villagers. The tiger had killed 200 people so far, and they had to do something to keep it from killing more, so they rounded up the army and began a drive to comb it from the cover. As they chased the tiger, it fled into the Indian province of Uttarakhand and out of their jurisdiction and became the problem of the Indian government. Upon arriving in Uttarakhand, the tiger proceeded to kill and eat humans and increased its tally to 440 people before the Indian government commissioned a reactive force. Eddie Knowles was chosen to pursue and dispose of the tiger as he was from a well-known sporting family. Eddie's family was wealthy and enjoyed the game hunting the area had to offer. He was skilled, but after 4 years the tiger still prowled the forests and seemed to pick victims at will and urge, without impedance. Jim Corbett was an Indian-born British hunter who was asked to kill the man-eater and bring confidence back to the countryside. Jim ordered that all bounties on the tiger be canceled and all bounty hunters be removed from the jungle as he pursued the man-eater. He and his support crew began heading to the area of Pali, a village of 50 total occupants, soon thereafter. A woman had recently been stalked and killed there, and they figured it would be a great starting point in their hunt. When Jim and his hunting party arrived in Pali, villagers were hiding in their houses and terrified. They'd been locked up in a self-imposed sequester for 5 days. The tiger had been seen and heard roaring all around the village as it claimed a domain and dominance in the area. The villagers informed Corbett that the tiger was known to walk along the road near the village, so he decided to sleep outside near it to try to ambush the predator. The moon lit the road and scattered shadows agitated by the breeze, causing imagined monsters as Jim spent a very unwise and second-thought restless night among the huts of the village. When the tiger didn't show itself the first night, Jim invited the villagers to take him into the jungle and try to confront the tiger on its own turf. The villagers refused and relayed the story of its latest victim to him. Apparently the woman was part of a small group sent to gather oak leaves in the forest for food for cattle. They'd gone about a half a mile into the jungle and climbed the trees to gather the leaves. The tree that enticed them stood alongside a shallow ravine. While the women were distracted with gathering leaves, the tiger had used the ravine to sneak up on the woman and hid itself behind a large boulder. It watched the women in the tree until one of them started to climb down. Just as she was a few feet from the ground, it snatched her by rising up from the ravine and pulling her down by her foot. As she collapsed into the ravine, it crushed her neck and dragged her into the jungle. The rest of the leaf-picking party watched as the woman was snatched and they ran back to the village. Upon hearing of the attack on the woman, the men of the village led a group of people armed with pots to clang and drums to bang to drive the animal away, as the women followed, contributing their own ruckus to frighten the beast. As soon as the group approached the attack site, they were terrified to hear a loud roar from the ravine just 30 yards away. Some of the men scattered in fear and ran back to their village. The sole armed man fired a shot into the air, which caused the enraged tiger to emerge from cover. After listening to the villagers' account of the attack and its aftermath, Corbett spent 3 hours following the tracks and sign through the forest. The villagers asked him to set out guards to allow the villagers to harvest their wheat crops. They quickly and nervously harvested what they could of their grain all in one day. Villagers also utilized the feeling of safety to catch up on neglected cleaning duties around the village and cleaned up the common yard. They were still too afraid to show him where the tiger was in the jungle, and he had to hunt despite a lack of knowledge of the species of the animal he was pursuing. The villagers informed Jim that just up the hill there were plenty of mountain goats, and he decided to kill a few for food for them and the hunters. Jim fired a Martini Henry rifle, which was a larger bore rifle suitable for many forms of animals found in the jungle, even a tiger. This was definitely classic mountain goat country, with jutting rocks and ravines rising at random intervals. The first goat he saw he killed, and it tumbled down the hill, alerting nearby goats which fled toward Corbett and his crew. He dropped another 2 goats in the resulting confusion. The villagers were in awe at the power and productivity of the rifle and retrieved their harvest gleefully. After witnessing the mountain goat harvest, the villagers now had full confidence in Jim and his hunting party's abilities. Jim gathered an entourage to once again investigate the site of the woman's attack. Once at the site, Corbett observed that the tiger came from a specific direction and discerned that the tracks were from a tigress who was older and possibly in desperate health. He could see that the woman's skin from the palm of her hands was still hanging from the tree bark in a testimony to her desperate attempt to prevent the tiger from killing her. There was a pool of blood a few yards away from the tree, an obvious sign of a struggle. The blood trail now turned into a drag trail, which left the ravine just above the attack site. The party gathered up a few remaining bone fragments of the woman for the cremation ceremony according to the local cultural practices and returned to the village. They then headed out to another attack site not far away. The tiger had ambushed a man's wife and began dragging her off into the jungle for 100 yards. Her sister pursued the tiger while it carried her sibling away and was trying to scare the tiger off when it turned and chased her down the hill. The woman who escaped was so terrified by the event that she lost her ability to speak for 12 months. Upon seeing Jim, the woman blessed him by stooping and touching his feet as a gesture of gratitude. The vastness of the area stymied Jim's confidence and success. Jim toured the area villages and canvassed the occupants to find out if they had seen the tigress. On a few occasions, Jim had been close to killing a few of the local man-eaters, but they stayed in cover, preventing him from doing so. The tigress had apparently left the area, so Jim decided to move on to Champawat, just 15 miles away. A woman was collecting dry sticks for a fire when she was ambushed by the tigress in Champawat. When 20 men were going to the local market, called a bazaar, they heard the screams of a woman. Then they saw the tigress holding the woman by the flesh of her back as she screamed aloud to God and man for help as she beat her chest in terror. Her screams eventually faded as she was killed while the men did nothing to help her. She was covered in blood and obviously fatally wounded, so the men knew they could not save her. A rescue party of 60 people set out to recover her. A couple of 100 yards from where she was gathering sticks, they found her torn and bloody clothes. The members of the party started beating their drums and firing their firearms as they proceeded following the trail. As they followed the trail, they eventually came to her body, laid out on a large, flat rock. Her body was licked clean of blood and nude, but otherwise unconsumed. The men attempted to preserve her virtue by covering her as they reclaimed her body and brought it back to the village. The burdensome weight of having a man-eater lurking nearby weighed heavily on all of the people. The villagers encouraged Jim to move a bit further away to a bungalow near a spot where many people had been killed. Once he was there, 2 men showed up and informed him that a cow had been killed at a village just 10 miles away. The hunters departed for the area immediately and discovered it was a calf that had been killed by a leopard and not a tiger. Jim returned to the bungalow to meet again with one of the leaders, but he had not returned. The villagers decided to take Jim to a known watering hole for the tiger where he observed its tracks. He returned to the bungalow and met with the community leader who had arrived. After conversing with the leader, Jim was surprised to hear him announce that he would return in the dark instead of staying the night, as he'd previously stated he would. The next day, Jim was speaking with the leader, who had returned after finishing business in Champawat. They saw a man quickly approaching in alarm. Jim quickly excused himself and walked toward the man. The man's news was that the tiger had returned and killed a young woman. Jim gathered his arms and provisions and rounded up his men. The messenger led the group toward the kill site. Corbett then began gathering insights regarding the attack. A witness indicated that there was a group of young people gathering sticks under a tree when the attack occurred. Once the young woman was snatched, the rest of her party ran back to the village. The witness pointed out the tree under which the attack was made, and Jim began approaching while analyzing the sign and terrain. The terrain was mostly open and should have allowed the group of 12 people to see the tiger as it closed in on them. At the attack scene, Jim observed a large pool of blood and beautiful blue beads that the girl wore. Along the tiger's tracks were patches of blood, and her clothes were found along the trail. The girl's long raven hair was shed on thorns along the path. One of the villagers had defied Jim's orders to stay at the village and crept up behind him as he stalked the tiger. Jim ordered the man to remove his heavy boots and stay close as they made their way through the foliage. Jim continued to follow the blood trail down the hill through rough terrain and hostile plant life. The man accompanying Jim began to get very nervous as his voice strained in their conversation. The man decided to climb a nearby boulder and seek safety, as opposed to continue to follow Jim and the tiger through the bushes. As Jim approached the tiger, now hauling its kill, he pushed her by getting too close to her, and she moved her meal to another location. He found the tiger's tracks with bone splinters near the creek. He found a severed human leg, bitten off just below the knee with apparently one clean bite and still trickling blood. Overwhelmed by a sense of impending danger, Jim glanced around and observed some dirt tumbling down a nearby embankment, belying the tiger's recent escape. Jim sprinted up the bank and grabbed some tangled plants to steady himself. Once he gathered himself, he could see the plant life righting itself from the tigress passing through it. He followed the tracks and blood trail through a dangerous and unstable rock field. He continued to track the tiger from diminishing blood trail to diminishing blood trail, while maintaining a wary eye for her whereabouts. He could hear her growling a short distance away and attempt to intimidate him from continuing his pursuit. He sped up her pursuit, and this seemed to settle her growling as she realized it gave her location away. Jim decided to return for the night and buried the severed leg for recovery later for burial ceremonies. He picked up the man on the boulder as he returned. Jim knew that the tigress consumed the rest of the young woman and would sleep for the next day. He knew he would need an organized event called a beat. This is when the villagers would string a fabric in a huge circle or line that tigers will for some reason not pass. Between the din made by the people and the presence of the solid piece of cloth, tigers magnanimously run away from the line of beaters. Then they would begin beating drums and pots and then close in the circle or the line while moving the cloth into a tighter and tighter area, eventually trapping the tiger. After observing the terrain, Jim decided they could set up a line of beaters and drive toward a gorge, which he believed the tiger would enter to try to escape through. He had local leaders gather a big group of beaters and rested for the night. Jim arrived at the beat location an hour early and made sure to look over the area and how his plan would work out. He felt good about the plan, and eventually 290 men showed up for the beat. Jim set the beaters out according to his plan and established the plan and roles for them. He instructed the men not to leave until he came and relieved them from their assignment. Jim then scrambled across the valley to the mouth of the ravine, where he expected the tiger to emerge from. For some reason, the beaters started the beat before Jim gave the signal, and he had to hurry into his position. The beaters were disorganized as they proceeded across the hill. The men yelled and clamored around the hill in complete chaos. The The tiger appeared briefly, but one of the village leaders accompanying Jim prematurely fired his double-barrel shotgun, and Jim squeezed off a parting shot in the tiger's direction, causing the beaters to begin celebrating, even though the man-eater was not dead yet. Just then the tigress sprang from Jim's left, and he quickly fired at her. He was certain he missed her, as she paused in her tracks and briefly stared at him. He did hit her, but too far back, and immediately chambered another round and fired again. The tigress lowered her head and bared her teeth as Jim prepared for her to charge him. He had only brought 3 cartridges, and now had fired 2. The tigress turned away and crossed a stream and easily navigated the adjacent hill along a ledge. She climbed to a projecting rock as Jim yelled for the leader to bring him his gun. Jim ran over and grabbed the gun from the leader as he wouldn't move, and headed back after the tigress. The tigress emerged at the protruding rock and revealed herself for a shot. Jim fired and hit the tigress in the paw, but she was in her death throes already, and he didn't know it. She collapsed and breathed her last on the edge of the protruding rock. The beaters began shouting how they wanted to hack her to bits, surprising Jim and bringing him back to awareness of them. The beaters quickly approached with rusty swords, sticks, and other weapons. The men, now enraged at the sight of their torturer, felt their anger subside at the sight of her body and the end of their source of fear and terror. The beaters carefully lowered the tigress from the rock and brought her back to the village. Jim recalled as he observed her before she died on the rock that her mouth was disfigured. Her upper right canine was broken in half, and her lower right canine was broken completely off. This injury clearly prevented her from killing her normal prey and caused her to focus on human prey. The tiger was loaded onto a tote to carry it back to the village past the strands of hair from its last kill, still in the thorns. Villagers and nearby occupants lit the evening with torches as they approached the presentation of the tigress's body. The villagers processed bits of the tiger into charms to give the wearer courage and prevent wild animal attack. The fingers of the girl were given to Jim after extraction from the tigress's stomach, and he buried them in his own personal ceremony and tribute. The villagers rejoiced as they could now once again travel their roads and paths in safety and bid him farewell. Jim took with him the tigress's pelt and head as a keepsake. He presented the pelt to the woman who could not speak from the prior attack. At the sight of the tigress's pelt, she regained her ability to speak and began yelling and shouting for joy. Thank you for watching Scary Animal Attacks. Please consider liking and commenting on our video if you like it, and share it to your social media. Clicking the bell will make sure you get notified when we post. And whatever you do, make sure to be safe out there, because you don't want to end up on an episode of Scary Animal Attacks. Welcome back to Scary Animal Attacks. This week's episode takes us to the dense arboreal forests of the taiga of the Russian Far East. A province named Primoria features a rolling topography with the world's largest undammed river, the Amur River. The wildlife of the area is a murderer's row of some of the most dangerous predators on Earth. Carnivores, like the Amur brown bear that grows to enormous size. Timber wolves, which have been known to pack up to packs numbering 20 individuals. The Amur leopard, or snow leopard, which hunts among the crags and cliffs. Wolverines, which will fight any animal that crosses its path. And the largest killer cat in the world, the Siberian tiger. These predators feed on the caribou, moose, elk, and deer, as well as the very dangerous wild boar. Judging by the panel of dangerous animals, it's amazing that there are people who scrape out a living here. In the depths of the winter of 1997, poacher Vladimir Markov was going poaching and loading up his gear to travel to his remote cabin. He spent a lot of time there, as employment is very hard to come by, but a brave and resourceful man can hunt, fish, and trap enough to survive. Markov gave his wife a kiss goodbye and had his friend drive him away from his home in Luchagorsk and down about 50 miles of the roughest road imaginable. Markov and his friend packed his supplies into the cabin as he was preparing to settle down for the night to go hunting in the morning. The next morning, Markov woke up early and grabbed his gun as he headed out of the door. The temperatures were well below zero, but he was used to it. He and his dogs were not hunting anything in particular, but what they wanted most was anything he could sell in the black markets. This could be meat from deer or boars, or pelts from wolves, leopards, or even tigers. Tigers and leopards are protected by law, but yield an enormous amount of money on the Chinese markets to the south. As Markov led his dogs through the forest on foot, they came across a huge track of a male Siberian tiger. This was the opportunity he'd been hoping for. The pack followed the tracks for a few miles as it meandered through the thick brush and over hills. As the group tracked the giant cat, they could see its tracks in the snow as it pursued wild boar, and knew they must be close to it. The dogs bayed and barked as Markov approached the end of the trail. He could see the muscles ripple across the shoulders of the cat as it leaned over its recent kill and glared at the man, demonstrating it was not about to relinquish its kill. Markov raised his shotgun and fired at the cat. He was a sure shot, as his livelihood depended on it, and the cat flashed through the white birch forest as it disappeared from his view. He was certain he had mortally wounded the tiger, and now had a bonus he would also glean. He walked over to the boar that the tiger was feeding on and began cutting himself some of the fresh meat. Markov salvaged a good amount of meat from the boar carcass and turned his attention to the tiger, which he was sure would be lying dead over the hill. He found the cat's enormous tracks in the snow and began following each step as he found it. Some blood here, a track there. The fresh snow made it easy, but he noticed that as he followed, the blood trail seemed to decrease. As he followed the tracks for a few miles, the blood in the tracks stopped, and he realized he would not be able to catch up to the tiger if it wasn't mortally wounded. Disappointed, he redirected his travel back toward his cabin and the warmth therein. He would feed his dogs and himself some of the salvaged meat and hunt again the next day. When he gets back to his cabin, he takes one of the haunches from the boar and put it in the wellhead of his beehive, and takes the other to town to see what he can trade for it. He trades for some needed supplies for his camp and some more ammunition for his shotgun, and makes it back to his cabin just before sunset. While Markov was in town, the wounded tiger returned to his boar kill and smelled the scent of the man and his dogs, and also noticed that most of his kill was taken. Using his keen sense of smell, he follows the tracks of the man for quite a while, and a few hours into the dark of the night finds the cached hind haunch from his kill, which Markov stored in the beehive wellhead. The tiger destroys the wellhead out of frustration and reclaims his boar meat. He drags it off a short distance and eats it a little ways from the cabin. The tiger is not happy with how events transpired, and is not satisfied with the fact that he got his meat back. He silently pads down to the cabin and walks around it, carefully analyzing the situation. Markov's dogs bark incessantly, and he realizes something is going on outside. Markov waits for some time to get a good look at the cat and decides to solve this problem with a well-placed shot. Markov grabs his gun and calls his dogs into the cabin. His cabin is set up with shooting ports that allow him to put his gun barrel through the wall and shoot to the outside, sort of like a hunting blind. He points his shotgun through the shooting port and fires at the tiger. The giant cat disappears into the forest once again, having been wounded twice now by the same man. The next day, Markov is unnerved by the fact that the tiger showed up at his cabin and wouldn't leave. It clearly reclaimed the hind haunch from the wild boar and still came to his cabin afterward, so its behavior was not about food. These details sent him into a psychological tailspin. In the Far East, tigers are believed to have a vengeful and calculating aspect to their behavior. Locals believe that they hold grudges and exact revenge long periods of time after events. Markov decides he must leave the taiga and departs to his friend's cabin to catch a ride back to town and safety. At his friend Duncha's house, Duncha tries to convince him to stay at his cabin for the night, as the radiator fluid has been drained from the vehicle. This must be done each night as the temperatures are too cold to leave it in. Markov finds his resolve and decides against staying with his friends and waiting. He decides to head back to his cabin and deal with this tiger the only way he knows, by shooting it and killing it. While Markov was gone, the tiger gained entry to his cabin by demolishing the door. The man's scent was everywhere in the cabin, and the cat chewed, clawed, and bit anything that smelled like him. The tiger finds a metal water-drinking ladle and flattens it, and puts canine tooth-size holes in the cup part. The tiger shreds, splinters, and destroys any of the man's tools and possessions he finds outside. After he finished ransacking the cabin, he finds a well-hidden spot and lays in wait for Markov over the trail to the cabin. As the now resolved Markov approaches his own cabin in the dark, the tiger ambushes him from a well-hidden blind beneath a low-hanging spruce bough. The fight, if you can call it that, didn't last long. Investigators would find a horrid scene, with the surrounding snow covered in blood at the nexus where tiger and man's tracks met. A single dog leg protrudes from the snow. The snow had been stomped down into a circle and melted off, with a human femur picked clean of flesh in the middle of it. A bloody drag trail leads to another cleared-out circle, in which they found the rest of Markov. His boots and bloodied clothes still held their respective body parts. severed arms still clothed by the sleeves. Feeding on the man pacifies the tiger for a few days, then it leaves. The tiger heads downstream over the next few days, moving slowly from its now infected injuries. As it approaches a small camp that Markov frequented, it smells his scent on the outhouse and splinters the entire building, further injuring itself. The villagers have now heard about this tiger, and the taiga is empty of the poachers and miners and lumberjacks. The only exception to this void of humanity is a 25-year-old trapper named Andrei Pachitnya. Andrei's parents forbade him from checking his traps until the tiger was caught or killed, but he was bold to the point of foolishness. He had arrived on his trap line and checked a few traps before returning to his cabin to cook lunch. A mile and a half away, the tiger smells Andrei and breaks into a nearby cabin. He trashes this cabin, just like he did to Markov's. Anything that smells like a human, he claws, bites, or breaks. The tiger takes the mattress from the bed and carries it out into the snow. The tiger carefully lays the mattress out in a hidden ambush spot and lays down on it to wait above the trail leading to the cabin. Andrei was not unprepared to check his traps and left his cabin with his rifle for protection. It was a Mosin Nagant rifle, nearly 100 years old. Siberian winters are very hard on anything that rusts, but they're very hard on ammunition as well. The temperatures drop so low that the air inside the bullet casing can sweat inside the round. In one season of winter, this can ruin or render unreliable all ammunition a trapper possesses. As Andrei approached his neighbor's cabin en route to check his traps, he was ambushed by the tiger from his resting spot atop the mattress from a distance of only 10 yards. The young man had quick reflexes, though, as he was able to quickly pull his rifle from his shoulder strap and put it to his shoulder to fire. The only problem was the ammunition was corrupted, and the bullet did not fire. The tiger did not die. The rifle misfired when the young trapper needed it most. Andrei's father rounded up a search team to find his son, and soon located the ambush site, which was bloodless. The tiger broke the young man's neck without shedding any of his blood. His father picked up the rifle and confirmed the misfired cartridge and threw the gun into the river. The drag trail away from the kill site was 50 yards and went into some trees. The sight the men witnessed next was tragic, especially to the young man's father. Andrei's entire existence had been reduced to his shirt and pants, with his boots covered with his blood. His crucifix lay atop the snow nearby. The tiger fed on him for 3 days and consumed nearly every bit of Andrei. What was recovered could fit in a large shirt pocket. The men collected the scant remains and returned to inform his mother. Project Tiger is a group of tiger researchers and enforcement officers funded by Western conservation groups, and they operate something like park rangers, but without a park. They set up checkpoints and information hubs to let the locals know about the tiger and how to stay safe. They assembled a professional hunting team of 6 men to start tracking the tiger and save human lives. In early December, the hunters tracked the limping tiger tracks to Andrei's cabin, where they could see everything was in a shambles. The tiger had repeated his venting on anything that smelled human and splintered tools and accommodations alike. From there they followed him through the mountains and observed his tracks as he pursued game time after time with no success. The head tracker's name was Yuri Trush, and he was flanked by officers Shibnev and Pianka. The hunters had noticed the tracks of 5 other tigers in the area, but the large male they were following had a tail in his track. His wounded right foreleg had stopped bleeding now, but he was carrying it, so his tracks would show only 3 legs and unusually large paw prints. The hunters followed the tiger as he hunts his way back into a more remote area near a cabin of a man called Shlemenko. As the hunting party enters a clearing near the cabin, a deafening roar rattles the bones of the men. Officer Trush turns toward the area emanating the roar to see the giant cat leap toward him from about 20 feet away. During the adrenalized slow-motion moment, Trush sees the intense, angry look in the tiger's eyes focused like lasers on him. Its paws are outstretched toward him, and he can even see the extended razor-sharp claws reaching out toward him. Pianka and Shibnev had spread slightly ahead of Trush just before the ambush. All 3 men shouldered their rifles and commenced firing as the tiger was flying through the air toward Officer Trush. The cat's open jaws and paws could not be stopped as the tiger plowed into Trush, sending the large man into a backward somersault. Trush had managed to get off 2 shots from his rifle while the cat was closing in on him, and the other 2 officers pumped out 11 shots total. Trush had deep gashes on his back, thigh, and arm from the impact of the vengeful tiger, but the giant was dead. He picked himself up from the snow and was completely confused by the speed of the attack and had no idea where his rifle had gone. As the men approached the tiger, incredibly they could see that Trush's rifle had actually gone down the throat of the charging tiger and was partially protruding from its mouth as it lay dead. The dead tiger was loaded into a vehicle and taken back to the village to assuage fears. The cat was emaciated with a giant head. The men skinned the tiger and could see where the cat was wounded by more than Markov's 2 shots. The tiger had been wounded several other times and even carried several lead balls from the larger shot embedded in its flesh. The tiger was just reaching maturity and would later be stuffed and displayed at the administrative headquarters back in Luchakorsk. Welcome back to Scary Animal Attacks. Please take time to like and share today's video if you enjoy it and post it to your social media to let others know of our educational and entertaining channel. Today's episode takes us to the primitive and lush jungles of the Sundarbans near the Bay of Bengal in western India. The Sundarbans are a mangrove wilderness featuring closed and open mangrove forests, mud flats, barren land, as well as agricultural land local farmers use for subsistence farming. The area has a broad diversity of wildlife and is struggling to maintain the balance between the demands of mankind and nature. The area is dotted with tidal streams and canals that routinely flood and subside with the tide. The ground is almost always wet and muddy, so navigation requires a boat. The Sundarbans are an area that is protected from human encroachment for the most part. There is limited hunting or fishing in the area, but that doesn't always stop scofflaws or bandits. Many locals ignore the laws to gather crabs or fish for their own income without bothering to purchase a license. These kinds of people are not on the authorities' radar as they are unexpected to traverse the area. Ideally, travelers to the area would purchase a license or permit and authorities would be made aware of where they are planning on going. Consequently, they know where and when to search for them if they overstay their plans. The subjects of our episode today are Sushil and his son Yotish, as well as Sushil's adopted daughter Malina. The trio made plans to venture into the Sundarbans to a great spot for crab. They left at the break of dawn for a preserve called Kalakali, a place in which fishing is banned. As they labored to paddle upstream, the sunlight grew brighter as the forest grew darker. 40-year-old Yotish sat at the front of the boat to help navigate. Then 62-year-old Sushil in the middle with Malina at the end of the boat. The canopy stretched further across the sky and surrounded them in secrecy and isolation. Further and further they paddled until they arrived at their desired crabbing spot, and immediately started sorting through their equipment, preparing for today's catch. The jungle air is always heavy with humidity, and today was no different, but there was something else in the air that morning. The boat was very close to the banks and would be easy to get out of to hunt for crabs, but the unusual odor that drifted on the air brought caution to the minds of the group. They decided to paddle further out and away from the bank. Unbeknownst to the trio, they were not alone on this morning's journey. There was an observer sleeking silently in the bush alongside the group as they slowly paddled upstream. The observer had been following them for quite some time, hoping they would get close enough to the bank to allow for a lightning ambush. Patience is a valuable trait when you are one of the world's most fierce predators. The group changed the angle of their canoe and began to paddle toward the middle of the creek when all hell broke loose. Malina looked up soon enough to see a dark orange blur streaking toward the boat from the bank. She screamed, "Dada, bug!" which means tiger. Yotish saw the blur pass him as he was frozen in fear. The tiger launched itself from the bank and landed on top of his father, Sushil. His father's legs were poking out from under the gigantic cat and were kicking all over, trying to get away. It took a few seconds for the dire situation to register to Yotish before he searched around to find a stick, and Malina grabbed a jungle machete. The pair began attacking the tiger, but their strikes went completely ignored by the ravenous beast. The tiger clamped its jaws on Sushil's neck over and over until it got a good grip. Then it jerked its head back to flip his now limp body over onto its back. It next launched itself over the edge of the boat and landed on the bank with Sushil's body in its mouth. Brother and sister watched as the muscular beast disappeared into the dark forest with their father's body clenched in its jaws. Traumatized by the sight, Malina fainted as Yotish yelled to signal nearby fishermen, who hastily paddled toward them. None of the people chose to follow the tiger into the jungle for fear of becoming its next meal themselves. Yotish quickly began paddling his sister and their canoe back to safety to contact authorities. Neither the family nor the authorities made any attempt to, nor are optimistic about the recovery of Sushil's body. The hard reality of living in Bengal tiger habitat is something the indigenous people of the area have dealt with for thousands of years and will likely continue dealing with for the foreseeable future. Surviving widows of a man who's killed by a tiger are often ostracized in Indian culture due to the belief of the attack being caused by bad luck from the wife. I would love to read your thoughts on this episode in the comments below, and make sure to be safe, as you never know when an animal might be watching you.